Hi, it's Yvonne Dalorto at Pulpo, and welcome to another zoompod using the free resources from Jolly Learning UK. And today I'm looking at the creative writing sheets, and there's a huge variety of them. And what you can see here on the side is a whole list of the range of writing that is available. So some are attached, well, one is attached to a reading book, Moat Farm, and we have fantasy. We also have real life things, nonfiction, that could be made into a story, or as I'll have a look at a bit later on, how we can use them for nonfiction. So there's a nice balance to these in that you can get all areas of creative writing covered, but also getting children's knowledge activated about how to start the writing process, which is not easy. It's not an easy one for young children. So here we have three examples I've chosen. And as you can see, the illustrations are different, which are good. And also the alien ones, the aliens do pop up in some of the readers. So that's a helpful link. And the science one, which we have question prompts, who's the man, who is he? We can activate children's knowledge, get them speaking. But again, as I'm going to show you, we can use this for non-fiction. We have bigger gaps for writing, smaller gaps. But equally, if you have a child who has got issues with handwriting, has got poor muscle tone, is struggling with writing, you can also make the lines a little bit bigger. Stick a bit of paper with a bigger line over it, bigger lines, and that also can help. Now, as I always say in these videos, if you're teaching one concept, we could be revising so many. So here I have looked at the possibility of revising verb tenses. Even if you are only using the present continuous, you can passively be talking about the past and the present because children will have a concept of that. And you're modeling it in a way that's not explicit, but something they'll remember when you actually get to that lesson about future and the past. Here we're looking at a dialogue, so it does tie into some of the activities in the grammar books, and the children know the characters, so they can actually think up a story for Bee and Inky and Snake. Also, talking about what happened before. In one of my other videos, I mentioned about what happened before, what's happening now, what's happening after, so that they have at least a trajectory of the story that they're writing about. Also, it's a good way to talk about concepts of time, first, second, next, finally, because the finally bit during the stories can be a little bit tricky for children when they're trying to sum up a plot to come to a good ending. But yeah, this is a nice one here, as you can see. Also, as I'm going to mention in another slide about using the visual as a way to activate knowledge. So this one is about planting a seed, but it could also be used for nonfiction, where we're getting children to use sequencing skills. Again, first, second, what happens next? We have the question prompts. And we also, if you looked at the visual and want to get children to talk about things they know from the wider curriculum, from science, what we can be asking them is, talk about a plant. What do you know? Can you think of colors of flowers, the shapes that flowers have? Also, seeds. Most children are familiar what happens with seeds. What does a seed need to grow? So it can support a science project or just activating children's knowledge from a topic content. So that's quite a good one. And if you are working with children who find writing very challenging and also maybe on the SEND spectrum, an idea when they're presented with a lot of lines like this is to use dots, and the dots indicate where to start and where to finish. Because if you're given a lot of lines to fill in as a child, you may instantly think, I'm not even going to try. But if you say, right, we're going to start at one point and I just want you to get to that point, that may be achievable, and you might be able to even use lines. This achievable amount will then extend to a greater capacity of writing that the children can build up over time. So that might work. And also frames. I've mentioned frames because sometimes you can just put a piece of paper above and a piece of paper below, and children just work within that. But this dot thing also works very well for reading. If you have a child just reading to the dots, it also is a way of achieving something rather than giving up. So that might help with some of you who are working with children on the spectrum. Again, looking at the illustrations, how could these be used? Now, what I've done in my classes, if I was going to use one of these, is activate interest at the end of one class by saying, have a look at this illustration. What do you see? What do you think? So that when I present it in the next class, they're already mm, engaged. They already have done it. We have some knowledge. So they're bringing that knowledge, and I can prompt them, and we start building up our vocabulary. We start building up the story. And it doesn't really matter at that point when we're starting if everyone has a similar storyline. It's what they add to it as they're developing their story. So again, we have a huge range of illustrations, as I've mentioned, and content and what could be. And again, these could be used for I Spy and also just revising key vocabulary. So the illustrations work very well on their own as well. As I always say, you can use the resource in many ways. So just to sum up, we're always looking at the beginning and the middle and the end of developing creative writing, and children always find the end slightly tricky, but it's getting them there that they have a well balanced creative writing path and the story has some substance to it. Now, what I've added before, this is in no particular order, it's just things for us to think about on what we can be revising while we're doing creative writing. So, apart from building the story up, apart from developing vocabulary, connectors, we could be using the creative writing as an assessment tool to see what the children remember from previous classes. If I have been teaching punctuation, if I have been doing conjunctions, if I have been using verb tenses, am I seeing any of that in the writing? And if the majority class are using it and several children aren't using some of my concepts, then I know I need to revise. But if the majority of the children are not using what I have taught, I need to look at my planning and revise bigger concepts again. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Using the creative writing stories. And as always, it's a pleasure to be able to share knowledge and extend the use of these free resources that are available on Jolly Learning. I look forward to doing another Zoom pod with you soon. Bye for now.